Hello everyone. Welcome to our Exploring English podcast channel, and are you looking to improving your English speaking and listening skills? Look no further. Our podcast conversations are the perfect way to improve your English language skills. By watching our podcast conversations, you'll be able to hear authentic English spoken at a natural pace by native speakers, helping you to better understand the language and improve your listening skills. Additionally, by listening to our conversations, you'll be able to pick up on common English phrases and idioms, helping you to improve natural when speaking English. So, join us for our podcast conversations and take your English language skills to the next level.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're going beyond the headlines with a story I think you all know,
Okay.
the Titanic.
Right.
And we're doing this deep dive using a pretty unique source podcast script that was designed for English language learners.
Interesting.
So, I know you're thinking, I know the Titanic story, but trust me, when we dig into these types of sources, we always find some hidden depths.
Well, and what I think is really fascinating about this is that you get to see like a really simplified version of this like very complicated event.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to see how this story is understood and retold for, like you said, a very specific audience.
Okay, so like jumping right into it, this script reminds us that the Titanic's official name was the RMS Titanic Royal Mail Ship.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just a pleasure cruise.
So it was like a working vessel, too.
It was contracted to carry mail for the British Royal Postal Service.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like adds another layer to the story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like it's connected to the British Empire in a very like official way.
Yeah. So, okay, RMS Titanic set sail from Southampton, England in April 1912, headed to New York City.
All right.
Over 2,200 passengers and crew on board,
Wow.
all excited for like the pinnacle of luxury travel.
I mean, can you imagine? This is like the Edwardian era, like a time of
Yeah.
huge technological advancements.
Right.
And everyone just like believed in the power of human ingenuity.
And that's where like that infamous nickname comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Unsinkable.
Right. Chilling.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now.
Well, like knowing the ending, it's just,
Yeah, it's easy to look back and think they were so naive.
yeah.
But you have to remember, they were really pushing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
The Titanic was a huge accomplishment in engineering.
Right.
And that nickname, Unsinkable, it wasn't just like a marketing thing. They
Right.
really believed it.
They thought it was true.
Yeah. And of course, we know that belief was a big reason why the disaster was so bad.
So this script doesn't spend too much time, like, on the actual sinking. Like,
Mhm.
we all know the iceberg was involved.
Right. We know the basics.
But it jumps right into, like, the factors that made this a huge catastrophe.
Okay.
And this is where I think things get really interesting.
I agree.
So tell me a little bit about that. What were some of those big factors?
Well, the script highlights two main problems.
Okay.
The Titanic's speed and the fact that it didn't have enough lifeboats.
Wait, so you're telling me they put lifeboats on a ship that was unsinkable?
Right. It sounds crazy now,
Yeah.
but that's the thing.
Okay.
They really thought it couldn't sink.
Okay.
So the regulations back then didn't say they needed enough lifeboats for everyone on board.
Wow. So they believed in the technology so much that they didn't even think about basic safety.
Kind of a blind spot.
Yeah.
It makes you think about like how we balance progress with responsibility even today.
It's like that question is still relevant, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so the lifeboats weren't enough, but the script also talks about speed.
Yeah.
Like, they were going really fast in an area where they knew there were icebergs even after they had gotten warnings.
It all comes back to that unsinkable idea.
Yeah.
Why slow down? Nothing can hurt this ship.
But there's more to it, right? Like, there's a reason why the speed was such a big deal.
Exactly. Think about it.
Okay.
It's nighttime. The sea is super calm, which actually makes it harder to see icebergs.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, back then, they didn't have radar or anything like we do now.
Okay.
The lookouts were just using their eyes.
Oh, so if the sea was rough, they
Mhm.
would have seen the waves crashing against the iceberg.
Exactly.
But it was calm, so.
Yeah, plus it's nighttime visibility is already bad.
Right.
You add the Titanic speed to that, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Because they didn't have time to react.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The faster you're going, the less time you have to avoid anything.
So it wasn't just about hitting an iceberg. It was about a bunch of factors, all made worse by going so fast.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the people on board, the human element of this story.
Beyond the technology and the rules, there were real people on that ship.
Yeah.
each with their own lives and hopes and dreams.
And the script actually brings that to life a bit.
Yeah.
It talks about some of the famous passengers.
Right, cool.
Like John Jacob Astor IV. He was one of the richest men in the world back then.
Wow.
He was traveling in total luxury with his pregnant wife. They even brought their dog with them.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
It really shows you how the Titanic was like a little world all on its own.
Yeah.
You had the super rich in their fancy cabins, and then you had immigrants packed into steerage down in the lower decks.
Steerage?
Yeah, like the cheapest accommodation on the ship.
Oh, okay. I've heard that term, but I didn't really know what it meant.
Yeah, it makes sense that they'd use that term in a script for English language learners.
Right.
But yeah, steerage was often overcrowded and pretty basic.
So even on this unsinkable ship, there was already inequality,
Totally.
different realities depending on where you were.
And that sadly played a huge part in who lived and who died.
That's something I think we should explore more
Yeah.
in the next part of our deep dive.
It's just really striking how those inequalities,
Yeah.
like they were built into the ship itself.
Right.
And then they played out in such a horrific way when it sank.
Yeah. Our podcast script, it touches on this, even though it's meant to be like a simplified version of the story.
It does.
It says straight up that not everyone had the same chance of survival.
Right.
And it specifically points out that third-class passengers, a lot of them immigrants,
Yeah.
they had a really hard time even getting to the lifeboats.
And, it wasn't just where they were on the ship.
Okay.
Language barriers.
Right.
Different cultures.
Mhm.
Even just misinformation.
Mm.
All of that made things so much worse.
Can you imagine, like, not speaking English,
Yeah.
trying to understand what was happening in that chaos?
It would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
It really shows you how the problems went way beyond the sinking itself.
Right.
It was about the whole system.
Okay, so the script mentions the scramble for the lifeboats.
Oh, yeah.
Just this picture of panic and desperation.
It must have been awful.
Yeah.
But we were talking before about how there weren't enough lifeboats anyway.
Right.
And this is where one of the biggest lessons of the Titanic comes in,
Okay.
being prepared.
Prepared for what, though? Like, even if they had enough lifeboats, wouldn't it still have been a nightmare?
Well, that's what historians debate all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, what do they think?
Some people say that even with enough lifeboats, the evacuation might have been a mess.
Why?
Well, maybe they didn't have clear plans or the crew wasn't trained properly.
Oh, okay.
And the biggest thing, people didn't believe the ship was actually sinking.
Because of the whole unsinkable idea?
Exactly.
So their beliefs actually made things harder to deal with.
Yeah. And in a way, their own confidence worked against them.
So we talked about the lifeboats and the speed.
Right.
But the script also mentions that the Titanic got warnings.
Yeah.
Like multiple warnings about icebergs in the area.
And this is another big lesson.
What's that?
Listening to warnings.
Yeah. But sometimes you don't know something's a warning until after something bad happens.
It's easy to say that in hindsight.
Yeah.
But the Titanic is a good reminder that ignoring those signs can have huge consequences.
You can't always see what's coming, but you can pay attention to what's around you.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've covered like the technical stuff and the bigger issues,
Yeah.
but this deep dive isn't just about that. It's about the people, the
Absolutely.
human stories.
And our little podcast script. It does a good job with that.
Yeah, it brings those stories to life a bit.
Okay.
It mentions John Jacob Astor again, but this time it focuses on what he did during the sinking.
What was that?
He helped his wife into a lifeboat.
Oh, wow.
She was pregnant, remember?
Right.
And then he gave his spot to another woman.
He did?
Yeah.
Wow.
He died along with a lot of other men.
Yeah, because of that women and children first thing.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing that he put others before himself like that.
It is.
The script also mentions this couple, Isidore and Ida Strauss.
Oh, yeah?
They owned Macy's department store.
I've heard of them.
Their story is so sad.
What happened?
They were offered places on a lifeboat.
They were.
Yeah,
So they could have survived.
they could have.
But they didn't.
Isidore wouldn't leave while other men were still on board.
Wow.
Ida wouldn't leave her husband.
Oh, wow.
They said they would face their fate together.
It's hard to imagine making that choice.
It is.
But it shows you how strong their love was.
Yeah, it really does.
And then there's Molly Brown.
Oh yeah, the unsinkable Molly Brown.
Exactly.
She's like a symbol of survival and strength.
Yeah, and her story is so interesting because she wasn't just a passenger waiting to be rescued.
Right.
She was like helping load the lifeboats.
She was.
Yeah. And even when she was in a lifeboat,
Mhm.
she told the other women to row back and look for more survivors.
She did.
Yeah, she was amazing.
She didn't fit the stereotype of the helpless female passenger at all.
Not at all.
And later on, she even helped raise money for the families who lost loved ones.
Wow, so she was active even after the disaster.
Yeah, she was.
It's incredible how people reacted in such different ways.
It is.
Some with fear, some with courage,
Yeah.
some with despair, some with hope.
It reminds you that even in the worst situations, people find ways to cope,
Mm-hmm.
to help each other, to hang on to something.
You hit on something important there, I think.
What's that?
The Titanic wasn't just about death and loss.
Right.
It was also about the strength of the human spirit.
Yeah. It's about resilience.
And about empathy.
Absolutely.
Like, even in that horrible situation, people still cared for each other.
You see that a lot in disasters, actually. Yeah, the way communities support each other.
Yeah.
The kindness and generosity that comes out.
It's like the Titanic sank,
Yeah.
but the human spirit stayed afloat.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Is it?
How the Titanic still fascinates people.
Oh,
Like over 100 years later?
totally. And this podcast script we're looking at, it focuses on the basics.
Like the iceberg.
Yeah, and the sinking.
Right.
But I think you're right. It's those human stories that really draw us in.
It's like a glimpse into these lives that were changed forever.
Exactly.
And those stories, they just keep being told over and over
Yeah.
in books and movies,
Documentaries.
even museums.
Yeah.
It's like this event just captured our imagination.
And it hasn't let go.
Not at all.
So this script, it's simple,
Mm-hmm.
but it still tries to give us those bigger lessons.
Yeah, like the stuff we've been talking about.
Exactly.
Preparedness,
Heating warnings.
valuing every human life.
And those lessons, they go way beyond the Titanic.
They do.
They're like universal truths.
About being human.
Yeah.
Okay, so the script talks about the lifeboats,
Right, not enough for everyone.
which brings us back to preparedness.
Like, we can't assume things will always be safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing is unsinkable.
Life throws curveballs.
Yeah. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
And we can't always see them coming.
Nope.
But we can be ready,
Yeah, have a plan.
like for natural disasters or even like financial problems. Just
Exactly.
knowing that things can change in a second.
Then there's the warnings the Titanic got.
Oh, yeah. About the icebergs?
It's so easy to ignore warnings,
It is.
especially when you feel confident.
Oh, like it won't happen to me.
Exactly.
But even the best technology,
Even the smartest people,
they can make mistakes.
they can miss things.
So it's about being humble
Yeah. Knowing you don't have all the answers.
and being careful.
And sometimes those warnings, they come from unexpected places.
Like what?
a gut feeling,
Okay.
advice from someone you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Just being open to hearing those things.
To not being blinded by your own pride.
Exactly.
And then the last big lesson.
The value of human life.
That every single person matters.
It doesn't matter how rich you are.
Or your background.
Everyone had dreams, families.
It's like that saying,
What is it?
there but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah. It makes you think about our shared humanity.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive on the Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
using this little podcast script.
For English language learners,
Yeah,
it's amazing how much we can learn from this event.
even after all this time.
It's a story that stays with us.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I think it shows us something about what it means to be human.
Like our weaknesses and our strengths.
Yeah, the good and the bad.
So listener, as you think about the Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
we want you to consider this.
Okay.
How do we honor the people who died?
Well, not just by remembering the tragedy.
But by really learning those lessons.
Yeah. Be more prepared.
Be more aware.
Be more compassionate
Because that's how we learn from the past.
to make a better future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And until next time,
Keep exploring
keep asking questions.
and keep digging deeper.